Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another Ramadan Health Show special with me, Alistair Greener. During this holy month, we've been discussing health topics relating to fasting. We've looked at the medical and spiritual benefits of fasting, the diet of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and its links with our health and well-being, and the physical and mental benefits of praying. In today's final episode in the series, we're going to be discussing halal meat slaughter. And it's a real pleasure to welcome back Ustadha Sidra Naeem, who has a Bachelor of Science in Biotechnology and is also an alima. Today, we'll be discussing the kinds of animals that Muslims aren't allowed to eat and the links with health as well as the halal slaughter process. Well, welcome back to the show, our fourth episode already. Let's start when we talk about halal, about the origins of where it came from and how it all started.
Yes, the very first time a meat slaughter is mentioned in the Quran is actually the two sons of Adam, Cain and Abel, or in Arabic, if you like, Habil and Qabil. So basically, Qabil, he offered a sacrifice, a meat sacrifice to God, and Habil, it's the other way around. Qabil, he offered a sacrifice of crops, and Habil, he offered a sacrifice of animals. And basically, God accepted that animal sacrifice. And then the big story, which is also in the Torah and in the Bible, about Abraham, when he was asked to sacrifice his son and God put a ram there in his place. That is also mentioned in the Quran. That is when kosher started, from that point onwards. And halal then carried on the same process as kosher, except there is one more part added on to halal, which is that the meat in the first place needs to be pure and wholesome and clean, which is the word tayyib is mentioned in the Quran every time the word halal is mentioned.
We talk a lot about halal, and I'm sure many people just almost take it for granted. Well, that's what we do. We eat halal meat. But sometimes maybe people aren't fully aware of exactly what the process is, how it happens, and what makes meat halal. So perhaps talk us through that.
Yes, so the very first part, even before you even get to the halal slaughter part, is that the meat has to be clean, and the animals have to be reared properly, without cruelty, wholesome, pure meat, free of disease, free of hormones, free of all the chemicals, the growth hormones and the antibiotics. If you think about all of that, that's going into all the food nowadays. And then the next part is the halal slaughter. And for that, the animals are not allowed to see each other, okay, so, because that puts fear in them, and that's cruel as well. And then we cut with a very sharp knife the carotid artery, which runs from the heart to the brain, and the jugular vein, which runs from the brain to the heart. The jugular vein is the vein which stops the pain immediately, and the carotid artery makes the blood gush all the way out, so then the meat is lovely and clean. So they're not allowed to see each other, and at that point we would also say the tasmiyah, which is the full sentence that we say where we are sacrificing in the name of God.
And for most people, their belief is that this is actually the most painless way for an animal to be slaughtered.
It is, and actually there has been scientific experiments that have proved that when the jugular vein is cut, the EEG shows no activity at all, so the animal is not feeling any pain at all. And the carotid artery, when that's cut, the blood flows completely out and the animal is still alive. So we are not allowed to eat dead animals. The heart is actually still beating when those two, the vein and the artery, is cut. And
because in other slaughter where the animals are often stunned beforehand, then technically the animal is dead at the moment that you're cutting those vital organs.
Yes. So over 33% of animals are already dead at the time of slaughter if they are stunned, and that's been proven because it stops the heartbeat. Mm-hmm. So captive bolt stunning, gas, gas chambers, and electric water baths, and all of that, the head stun, all of those things are happening to stun animals nowadays. And there's so much shock to the animal and pain as well, because that obviously is going to cause pain, and that then stops the heartbeat and the animal is dead at the time of slaughter. So one of the other criteria of halal meat is it's not allowed to be dead because of all the parasites and all the bacteria growing on it. And it needs to be free of blood, because with stunning, blood clots appear as well. And with blood, it contains a lot of toxins and urea, which can cause so much disease. Because of that, if we cut it at the carotid artery, it makes all the blood come out, and the animal meat then is clean for us to consume.
Now, that's going to have a dramatic impact on the nutritious quality of the meat as well. Tell us a little bit about that and how it does affect it.
Yes, because basically blood and urea, blood contains urea, which is like urine, and it contains toxins. That's all bad for us. Doctors have actually, written journals to prove that all of that, causes diseases. So if an animal is slaughtered in the correct way, it will be free of as much blood as possible, and then it will be healthy for us to eat. But it's a whole package of things, so it needs to be free of hormones and things as well. Because even animals we are allowed to eat, there are certain organs of that animal that we are not allowed to eat. For example, reproductive organs which contain extra hormones, because that imbalances our body chemistry. But also parts of the body of that animal which, may be halal for us to eat, things that contain a lot of blood, like the spleen, we wouldn't be allowed to eat, or the bladder, which contains urea. So there's even things there which we wouldn't be allowed to eat.
And then we come into the types of meat. I mean, everyone's familiar with the fact that pork isn't to be eaten.
Yes.
What's the actual reason behind that? And tell us about some of the other meats that can and can't be eaten.
Yes. So basically, with pork, it's actually mentioned in the Torah and in the Old Testament. It says that do not eat meat of the swine, for the meat of the swine is unclean for you. And we take on board exactly that. So it repeats the same thing in the Quran, do not eat meat of the swine. But the reason is pigs are scavengers, and they would even eat their own excreta and urine and things like that. So what happens is the muscles of that animal will have more amounts of urea in there, and they then cause actually 70 types of disease. One of them is tapeworm, which is a major one. Huge amounts of fat as well. Pork has, the most amount of fat in comparison to all the other meats. So that causes a lot more heart disease and cholesterol
And again,
problems.
as we've discussed all series, it's remarkable that this is something that we understand now with modern science and modern technology, yet this was written in the Quran all those centuries ago.
It was, and that's what's the beauty really of, the beauty with this Islam is they were, words of wisdom, and those are words of God, and there's always a reason behind it. So yes, so meat of the swine we wouldn't eat. Dead animals we wouldn't eat because of the extra bacteria and all the parasites that grow on it. Any animal that, like a carnivorous animal, would have more blood in it. Mm-hmm. So a carnivorous animal we wouldn't eat, or pests and things like that, which are like, because they eat dead animals. So there's all those kinds of animals that we wouldn't eat.
Now, coming to the actual slaughter itself, you talked about the words that were said and so on. So what kind of regulation is there surrounding halal meat slaughter in terms of who's able to perform it?
Now, that's a very interesting question, because did you know there is no law in England to define halal? So anybody could go and pop a halal symbol on top of the meat, and it's according to their own interpretation. So I think that the Jewish community are very intelligent. They've had a law since 1920 onwards, and they have got a proper law which tells them exactly what is kosher. Whereas with halal, there could be pork inside some. There was actually a couple of years ago, there was pork inside pakoras and they were labelled halal, and someone tried to sue the company and they couldn't because there was no law defining what halal is.
It would make life a lot more simple if there was some form of understanding and regulation. In terms of other meat, say, for example, male, female, other types of animals, talk us through that in terms of what's permissible.
So what's permissible is all types of cattle, herbivorous animals, all fish from the sea, domestic birds, and those kinds of animals are permissible to eat. All types of deer, camel is allowed as well. So basically herbivorous animals, not carnivorous animals or poisonous animals. And that is permissible to be eaten.
So, for example, like snakes, for example, some yes, but some no.
Well, snakes would be no because they're poisonous.
Right.
So snakes would be no. Or fish from the sea, but again, not carnivorous fish like sharks or fish like piranhas, which are poisonous, aren't they? So that kind of stuff. But even though the permissible animals are there, again, we're not allowed to eat the reproductive organs, things like the bladder, which contains urea, and spleen, which contains blood.
And what about the butchering process? Is there anything that's governed there to help continue, if you like, the whole halal process?
Yeah, there is no law, like I said. So at the moment, with the speed of line is huge of animals, because did you know that 25% of red meat Muslims are eating, yet we only make up 4% of the country. So you can imagine how much meat we are eating. And because of that, to keep up with all the huge demands of meat, there are very little regulations in place. So the animals are seeing each other. They're put basically in a line and they are seeing each other. The blades are all mechanical, and the same blades are being used again and again instead of cleaning in between, which means that they are being contaminated with blood and urea.
And it's quite interesting because we talked in our earlier episode about this move towards, I think it's called flexitarianism, where people are eating less meat because there's an environmental impact with all of that meat, as you indicated there, the amount of halal meat making up such a large percentage of all meat that's eaten.
Yes, yes.
What's your view about, from a chaplaincy point of view and also your own personal beliefs about Muslims maybe eating a little less meat?
Yes, I believe they should eat less because we should be following the sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was a semi-vegetarian, and he ate only meat on special occasions, which was the 2 Eids and perhaps on weddings and things. If we followed that, there would be a lot more health benefits, and it would help the whole halal industry as well. Because the reason why all these things are happening is because we are eating too much meat. Did you know even the actual tasmiyah, which you have to say when you slaughter the animal, is being halved because of the speed of the line, very, very quickly. Only half of it's being said. So technically what we're eating, may not be halal.
In the strictest version of it, yes.
Because there's no law, that's why. Yes.
Coming to the actual health benefits, you talked a lot about the fact that there's no blood in the system, the fact that this is meat free from hormones and from chemicals and so on. So what impact is that then having on people's health, the fact that they are eating meat which has a strict guidance associated with it?
Yes, so basically the antibiotics which are being given to animals either to fatten them up or chickens, especially chickens, is the most abused animal at the moment. A lot of chickens are being put inside barns, all cramped up together, and they're being fed growth hormones, and the antibiotics are given to stop the disease being spreading. There's a lot of coccidiosis going around in the barns because basically they have to be fattened up within 4 weeks to keep up with the demand of eating.
And I know that we have obviously a worldwide audience here at Islam Channel, but here in Britain, we eat a huge amount of chicken and poultry, don't we?
Chicken is actually the most amount of meat we eat out of all of the meats. Now, the antibiotics, this is a well-known fact within the medical industry. We are becoming immune to antibiotics because the antibiotics that are being fed to the animals are the same as the antibiotics that we are eating. So we are actually consuming those antibiotics through the meat of the animal, okay? And those antibiotics are making us immune. So this is why we have to make umpteenth trips to the doctor because the antibiotic we used is not working, and then the doctor has to give us another one.
Now, we're talking about halal meat, but a lot of the things you talk about in halal, apart from the actual slaughter process, but the actual build-up to that, the actual animal itself being reared in a certain way, actually isn't a million miles away from organic thinking, is it?
Yes, definitely. Organic is the best, especially with vegetables and things. We should try and have organic. The other problem is with the milk. Did you know that the cows are being you know, when you have a baby, you only have milk for a short while until the baby grows and then your milk stops. But the poor cows are being artificially inseminated so that they are in a continuous process of lactation, so we can keep getting milk from them. And their udders are infected with infections because of all the over milking that's happening. So a lot of the milk has got blood and pus in it. So organic milk is the best. And even if you look at the soil, a lot of these animals are not grazing on the grass because they're being kept in barns, and the soil is artificially then fed with manure and things.
Now, some people might say that, you know, it's all very well, you know, going for halal and organic and really good quality meat, but some people have a very, very tight budget and find it very difficult to be able to afford maybe this, you know, better quality meat. What would you say to that?
Cut down your meat.
So in other words, eat good but less.
The whole reason why the modern farming practices started in the first place was because they could not keep up with the demand. And I actually know 2 farmers. I know a Muslim sister, can you believe that? She's a farmer, and she's got an organic farm. And I met another farmer the other day at one of the big meetings I went to, and he was the other type of farmer. And he was explaining that to keep up with the demand of how much meat people want, we have had to do intensive rearing in order to produce enough meat for everybody. And this is why all the growth hormones we've got to pump into the chickens to make them grow fat quickly within 4 weeks. If you think of us humans, if you look at our children, we wouldn't dream of feeding them antibiotics and growth hormones to get them plumped up within 4 weeks. It's the slow development of the bones and the skins that have to be in place.
It's often that phrase, isn't it? The reason some meat is cheap, there is a very good reason for it being cheap.
There is,
and therefore maybe to avoid it, to eat less. And then there's a lot in the media at the moment about red meat, and red meat being associated with many different diseases, especially cancers of the bowel and the stomach. You know, what's your feeling about that?
Yes, that's absolutely true. There are nitrates in the meat, and the nitrates are reacting with our DNA system, and that together is making more cancerous cells. So there is a definite link there. But also red meat is more higher in fat content, and because of that there's more heart disease and cholesterol problems as well.
Let's look at, come back to Ramadan now, and obviously people will be, you know, breaking their fast with a variety of meals and things. What sort of recommendations do you make when it comes to meat? Obviously halal meat, but what kind of recommendations do you make to have a good diet during Ramadan, but also one that's going to be satisfying enough?
Yes, I think if we follow, again, the lifestyle of the Prophet, which we've got as the best example, he always ate fruit and vegetables. So he would open his fast with fruit, and then he was a semi-vegetarian. But Fridays is one of the days, in the days of the Prophet, the very rich families, they would eat meat on Fridays. So if we do, you know, really are craving for meat, we could keep our samosa with our lamb inside for maybe Fridays.
And again, you know, less but better quality.
Yes, of course, yes.
We've talked a little bit about, you know, all aspects of health during this Ramadan time, and about this evening about meat and things. Tell us a little bit more about the connection between meat that isn't pure, that isn't good, and disease, and why it's so important from a health perspective to stick with halal meat.
Yes, I mean, the main reason is actually the process. So with halal meat, the main thing is the carotid artery. When it's cut, within seconds the blood flows out of the body, not only because of the carotid artery, but if you just cut the vein and the carotid artery, the heart is still beating. And what that does is the heart pumps out the blood. And what's really interesting is if you do this properly, and none of the butchers are trained at the moment, the spinal cord is not cut. And that's like a lever system. So the lever system, together with the heart beating, is getting rid of all the blood. And that is actually proven that once that meat is in the fridge, it can stay for up to 3 days fresh.
Wow. Because
of all less blood content and less urea and less toxins, if it's done properly. But at the moment, there is a crisis because all sorts are going on.
Well, it's been an absolutely fascinating series. Thank you so much indeed for coming in. I think we all have a far better understanding of the faith during this particular time and its impact on our health, whether it be spiritual, mental or physical. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we must stress that should you suffer from any medical problems, it's always highly recommended that you contact your doctor or GP, as this programme gives you an alternative viewpoint to the health concern being discussed. Again, I'd like to thank our guest, Ustadha Sidra Naeem, for coming on to today's show and indeed for the whole series and sharing her alternative viewpoint. If you'd like to find out more about today's show or any of the topics that we've discussed during this very special series during Ramadan, then please do email us at healthshow@islamchannel.tv. Again, that's healthshow@islamchannel.tv. I wish you good luck with the remaining fasting days and a very Eid Mubarak in advance. Assalamu alaikum.